Why does the omnipotent Lord of the universe need to ritually, violently butcher something, animal or human, to forgive sins? Why would God need a blood sacrifice if he has a repentant heart already? When Jesus is teaching us things like turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, love your enemies, bless those who persecute you. If you don't forgive, you can't be forgiven. Do you think Jesus was giving us a different rule set that God apparently doesn't have to follow? God has to forgive through murder in some form, whether animal or Jesus, but Jesus says you guys just forgive each other. Why can't God just forgive when someone repents?
You are not given the power to forgive sins. That's why in Mark 2, when they say no one can forgive sins but God, Jesus answers, why does this fellow talk like, right? They say, why does this fellow talk like this? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? And
Correct.
Jesus' response is, I can forgive sins because I am Yahweh.
Did Jesus say that?
Well, that's what's implied. And that's why the Pharisees get so mad at him.
I mean, I don't think it is, though. Jesus didn't say that.
When you say there's a cost, is that cost blood?
Well, the blood is a symbol of the actual penalty. I mean,
why does the omnipotent Lord of the universe need to ritually, violently butcher something, animal or human, to forgive sins? Why would God need a blood sacrifice if he has a repentant heart already? When Jesus is teaching us things like turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, love your enemies, bless those who persecute you. If you don't forgive, you can't be forgiven. Do you think Jesus was giving us a different rule set that God apparently doesn't have to follow? God has to forgive through murder in some form, whether animal or Jesus, but Jesus says you guys just forgive each other. Why can't God just forgive when someone repents?
You are not given the power to forgive sins. That's why in Mark 2, when they say no one can forgive sins but God, Jesus answers, why does this fellow talk like, right? They say, why does this fellow talk like this? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? And
Correct.
Jesus' response is, I can forgive sins because I am Yahweh.
Did Jesus say that?
Well, that's what's implied. And that's why the Pharisees get so mad at him.
I mean, I don't think it is, though. Jesus didn't say that.
When you say there's a cost, is that cost blood?
Well, the blood is a symbol of the actual penalty. I mean,
I thought this was an interesting video. I did have a few comments to make. Number one, the guy says, why does the omnipotent God of the universe need to butcher animals or Jesus to forgive sins? And he's just supposed to say, it's okay. He has a sense of justice, and that's what runs through. See, many times when we share the gospel, we will leapfrog, through the stories of the Old Testament just to get to Jesus and get you saved. But the whole Old Testament is about the justice of God, not just the love of God. It's about justice. It's about parties that are wronged and what needs to be done to make that right. That's what righteousness is when you make something right. It's righteous. Justice is set up. It's to protect the innocent and also to take care of the rights of the wronged party. There's disclosure. And in this, God has said, even from the garden, if you sin against me, if you eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will die. And so he made a rule. And they ate of it, but they died. Now he allows for vicarious sacrifice. And so we see that thread going through, even through Jesus. Jesus is the vicarious sacrifice. He dies for me. Now the penalty that was due God because of my sin has been paid. That's the distinction between Christianity and all the other religions. You do something and you appease the person. Well, no, justice needs to be served by what has been done within the law. You can't just, if you go and murder somebody, you can't just go mow yards, for the rest of the week or something, and it's okay. Your actions after you committed the sin don't erase the sin, but justice and righteousness do. God makes the rules. You ask, does God have different rules for others than himself? Well, of course he does. He is holy. We are sinful. He does not allow us to do things that he himself can do because he's holy. He will do justice the right way. Everything he does is right. We have a hard time with that. We think that he is unrighteous if he does things that we don't like. So yeah, we are sinful and he makes rules. I am not to have vengeance. I am to forgive. Now he will have vengeance. He says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. My job is not to be vengeful. My job is to show forgiveness. You said, well, he has a repentant heart. Where? I mean, you clocked this other fellow, I think his name was Wes, on where does it say that? Where does it say that? He made an implication. You're like, well, where is that said? Where does God have a repentant heart? Why would he even need to have a repentant heart? You're expressing holes in your theology just as you think he has holes in his. It's very interesting to see. Where I'm going with this is you say the word omnipotent. Well, why would the omnipotent God? Well, who told you he was omnipotent? I mean, you're dealing with dispensational theology. There are theological viewpoints like dispensationalism, covenant theology. I myself am a contextualist. I look at the whole. I'm holistic in my understanding. Dispensational is more people who will look at the parts and from the parts infer the whole. They will say things like, he is an independent God, and find their verses. See, he's independent. They'll say he is the good God, and they'll find verses and now shove it over in that corner. They'll say he is the transcendent God and find verses and now shove it into another corner. They think all the parts reveal the whole. But it's the whole also that shows how the parts go together. When you look at, the human cell, when you look at an automobile engine, taking the parts off and put them in the corner does not reveal the function or the aesthetic. The human body is both function and aesthetic. And so that's how the Bible needs to be viewed. And dispensationalists usually just look at the parts, and that's where they get in trouble, because the parts don't reveal the whole as much as the whole shows how the parts work. So omnipotent, let me say this when I say that God is not omnipotent. When God said to Noah, I will not flood the earth again, and he gave the rainbow, guess what? Now he can't flood the earth again. He is not omnipotent. There's something that he cannot do where he said, I will not do this. I'm limiting myself. I will not flood the earth again. When he made promises to Abraham, he limited himself because now I'm going to work with you. I'm not just going to discard you. I'm going to make you as the sands of the sea, stars of the sky. I'm going to give you this land. So now he is honor bound to his word. When he says to David, I'm going to have a man come and sit on the throne of David forever, guess what? He can't ignore that. He can't do what he wants. He can't be omnipotent. Now he's working within that. Every time he makes a promise, he is now limiting something. He's saying something he can't do because he's not going to break his word. And so that's what happens there. He makes promises. So you're dealing with not the Bible per se, but you're dealing with this dispensational theology. And you have the same problem when you deal with Calvinists with their covenant theology of God chooses people to go to heaven, but if you go to hell, it's your fault. I mean, you can work that one out. I've still never been able to understand that one. A contextualist like myself looks at the Bible like the human body. I've read it 8 times, trying to understand it. If you went to a doctor who had viewed the human body, the anatomy 8 times, or a doctor that had never seen the human body in its totality, which one do you think would have a better understanding of the human body? So when we have these, we have to realize that you're dealing not with the Bible, you're dealing with a theological understanding, which can be very different. So just know what you're saying, know when you're talking to. So that's what I have to say. I think it's very interesting, but you weren't really against the Bible. You were just dealing with a theology.